Hello and welcome back to Outrider Gaming. This is Nick, and I'm going to get started with my Game 1 from the Tolworth First Founding Mayhem tournament that I attended this weekend. So this is Game 1 against Albert Barr with his Skaven. Pretty standard Skaven comp. Your slave units can't be too big, no double rares, etc. Right, so let's go on to his deployment and his army list. So on his far right, on my far left, he has a rat dart, then a hell pit with the magical attacks upgrade, another rat dart, a big block of slaves with a engineer in there, in the bottom right, as the picture says. I think that one had the doom rocket. Behind, then another block of slaves. They were just naked. All of his slaves were WYSIWYG. So unit on far left is hand weapon shields. That one is just hand weapons, and again there's an engineer in the front there. I think that one has the doom rocket, and the one in the leftmost unit was a level 1 wizard. Then you've got the warp lightning cannon, and then a big block out of clan rats with his grace here and a screaming bell. And you might not be able to see in that picture, but at the front left of that unit there is his BSB with the storm banner. Behind that unit you have the plague claw catapult. He also has a Plague Wind Mortar as a detachment for that unit. Another rat dart, another big block of slaves with another warp block engineer in there, and his doom wheel. And this is my deployment after I've vanguarded. So on my far left I have a unit of Glade Riders, then Glade Guard, Dryads in a wood, which turned out to be the wood that if you're in it at the end of your movement phase on a 4-up, you take d6 strength 4 hits. Treeman, my big unit of Flaming Glade Guard with my wizard in there. Another unit, and then another unit of Glade Guard. So kind of put all my shooting around the middle. So whichever side of the building he decides to go around, I can stop him. And the same goes for the 2 treemen there. So whichever way around that big building in the middle of the table he goes, I can react to that with the 2 treemen. Dryads in my free wood. Then there's my BSB. The role for the BSB was, I didn't quite know. Basically, he's there to protect him from the warp lightning cannon, which is directly opposite him through that building. So he's there basically to keep him from being shot out turn 1. Because, of course, all Skaven shooting is magical, and his ward save doesn't work against magic. And then after that, so Dryads in my free wood, some Glade Riders, and what I like to call my Tank Noble. And opposite him he has scouted to his 2 units of Gutter Runners. Now the Tank Noble is there basically because I want him to go either after the War Machines or the Doom Wheel. Because his front ward actually works against most of his War Machines, and the building there is still protecting him from the Warp Lightning Cannon. Or failing that, yeah. So, I get first turn. On the left, I move just move stuff out the woods, push up a little bit. There's no point in me really overcommitting here because of the storm banner. I can't shoot him anyway, so I just shuffle up a little bit to give myself some wiggle room. The mage actually isn't in the wood there, it just looks like it's at the movement tray. And on the right, I declared a charge with both the Eagle and the Wild Riders on his Gutter Runners. Sorry, I'm going to say Wild Riders a lot. They're Glade Riders. The Eagle Noble needed, because he was using the ground movement of 2 of his Eagle, he needed an 11 to get in, but I figured, might as well try it. Didn't get in, but, I rolled a 6 and a 3 or something. So he still moved further. I figured, what the hell, he's still going to move further than he would normally. And I put the Glade Riders in. I mean, I'm using this tournament as kind of practice for the Pillage, which is this weekend. So I figure, stress test some of my units. I knew they didn't have much of a shot here, but you never know. Keep them busy for a turn, stop them shooting at my stuff. It's all good. In my magic phase, I think I rolled particularly low. He just dispels everything. I don't really have much to cast at this point. Nothing really is within Dweller's range. I think I get Throne of Vines off. He's saving his dice for the big Dwellers that I could cast, and I decide not to risk the miscast. So there we go. Just leave us both with 6 dice stranded, and I got my Throne of Vines up. And after combat, this is what it looks like. I think I killed one gutter runner, lost 4 of my guys, but luckily I stuck. And you know, I'm going to lose that unit, but it's going to save, possibly, going to save that noble from taking all the poison shots in the world in his face. And in my shooting phase over here, I did do a couple of casualties to a few rat darts here and there, but nothing spectacular, with a stupid storm banner being up. So, in his face he pushes forward, the hell pit doesn't quite make it into the dryads, and his storm banner is still up, that hasn't gone yet, which is good for me. So yeah, that's what that looks like. He pushed up with somebody's unit. Now his bell up there, I don't know why he was trying to do this. Well, it turns out well for him, as you'll see later on, but I'm quite happy with this because of that big building there and the number of big blocks he is. He's kind of got himself into a bit of a traffic jam there, which in theory allows me to hit those units with whatever I want to. But as we'll see, I make a few mistakes, well, one major mistake in this game. And he's put his poison wind mortar in that building there, just to give it a bit more range, really. You know, and it protects him from my shooting, really. And on the right, the Doom Wheel pushes up, doesn't make it into my dryads. And here we go. So in his magic phase, he doesn't really get anything off. He's either out of range. The bell just moves forward a little bit. And yeah, nothing much happens in his magic phase. So I decide to charge in. So in my phase, more importantly, his storm banner stops, which is absolutely brilliant for me. So I charge in with both the dryads and the tree man into his Doom Wheel, and the noble goes into the gutter runners that he wasn't able to in the first turn, and he's taken a wound either from the standard shoot or from just some lucky shooting from the other unit there. And I just push forward with a few bits. My VSB is moved right up next to the building, basically A, to stay hidden, and B, I want him to be able to react to the Screaming Bell and go hold it up if needs be, because with a 3-up armor and a 3-up ward, he can hold up strength 3 troops quite nicely. And here we go. So I've moved my dryads back into the woods, thinking I'll risk it. DC strength 4, I still get a 5-up ward, and I move all the shooting in the world into close range of that Hell Pit Abomination, so it should be going down. And my treeman has moved up to just kind of hold up his blocks there. And also it allows him to shoot at the rat dart if needs be. So after my shooting, the tree man has taken off a couple of giant rats, but more importantly, the hell pit went down. It does not like short range flaming strength 4 from Wood Elves. No, it does not. And in combat, sorry, I didn't take as many pictures as I should have. In the combat, so unsurprisingly, the tree man and the dryads, for the loss of one dryad, make very short work of the Doom Wheel. So those are his casualties up there, top right, and overrun. So the dryads overrun into the slaves. Going to try and make an assassination run on the engineer, and the tree man is now into his backfield, ready to go rear charge stuff. He's off camera on the left here, or more importantly, if you remember deployment, he's going to go after that pie plate of doom weapon, which doesn't actually do anything in this game. I think it scatters off pretty much every shot, and like his two, basically I take his toys off before they can do anything. And as you can see on the right, the tank noble is running after those gutter runners. There we go, there's an overview of the board there. And I've taken a few casualties either from the warp lightning, just a couple of spells here and there, nothing major. Right, so in his turn, I think he just moves that block up there to stop me from, just to try and stop my treeman from charging into his bell this turn. So that's there, that's lovely. And he's just content to stay there and try and shoot me. In my shooting phase, I've already taken a couple of wounds off the cannon at the top. Because it's so big, I can shoot at it with various bits and bobs without any penalties, so, you know, that's that. Might as well. But more importantly, in his magic phase, he generated D3 warp tokens at the start. So it was very difficult to stop all his spells coming off. So in this phase, he actually managed to cast 13th on my big unit and brought it down to 2 guys. But more importantly, I failed the panic check. Okay, so that means that basically they're on double ones to rally, which they don't do. So I'm without a mage already at this point, which is fairly annoying. Anywho, and you can see my Glade Guard are being whittled down by shooting, which, I mean, this is where things start going skew-if. At the start of this turn, I thought I was in a very good position to win this game. We both thought it, and then basically his magic took over, and yeah. Incidentally, his Gracier was only on Law of Plague. So he had Plague, he had the Breath Weapon one, and he had every model within 12, every unit within 12 is affected by D6 Strength 5 hits, which is very important. So in my turn, I craftily pivot and wheel my tree man around here to go look at his Screaming Bell. At the top left, you can see that my fast cav come around to try and charge his war machine if needs be. At the top right of the picture, you might be able to see my tree man's in contact with, just right at the top right of that picture, my tree man is in contact with his Plague catapult. And this is where I make a mistake. I commit my BSB to the Screaming Bell. And you'll see why this is important. And I just put some archers up to try and kill some stuff. And even if you charge them with slaves, they're still elves, you know. I figure it's not too bad. So here we are. Here's an overview of the board. The Dryads are grinding out that unit. By now, they've assassinated the engineer in there. My noble has decided to not worry too much about the gutter runners, which proves to, well, not so much be a mistake, but yeah, it means he can't really. He doesn't really. I don't get the points for them, basically. And the tree man makes very short work of that war machine at the top, so he's coming back to deal with stuff. And this is where those last remnants of rat darts are really, really annoying. And as you can see, I actually shot off the last wound off the warp lightning cannon. So here we go. This is his turn. He finishes off the Dryads with the slaves, and he brings his gutter runners around. The ones at the top right that my noble would be fighting rally. He charges the slaves into my Glade Guard. I stand and shoot, figuring the way, no matter how he maximises, I'm going to get 4, if not 6 attacks onto his engineer, and I'm going to try and break him. And pushes forward. That last little rat there on the little moving tray to the left of that combat is just hilarious. He's just scooting around. And then, so in his magic phase, he starts by ringing the bell 1d6, and it goes forward. And I just didn't see that coming. But then again, that's the whole point of a practice tournament, right? And the way I'd aligned my units, I thought I was being clever, and this is another mistake which I didn't see coming. I mean, in itself, it's not a bad thing, but I do it so that when he closes the door on my tree man, my 2 things were perfectly flush, so that he engages both units. I think we played it right. If we didn't, please tell me. But I'm under the impression that that is the only way you can charge multiple units. You can force your opponent to have to charge multiple units. So that if he can close the door on you, and by doing so he hits another one of my unit, bang on, then it's one big combat. I don't know. What's your views on that? And he's still trying to fire this mortar thing, but it just doesn't do anything all game. And you can see there he's turned his. So he's finished off after finishing off the Dryads in my combat turn. He's now moving his slaves back towards the backboard. And here's some slaves versus Dryads action. I have to hold. And I'm just bringing some shooting to bear on those slave units, which he's bringing in to reinforce. And here we go. Now, this combat here is the big issue in this game. Now, I've brought in a mage, my second hero, into the side there. Now, this is after 1 round of combat, so this isn't my turn. So let me talk you through the last turn of combat first. So he charges in with both of those. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Originally his BSB was on the far left, but the way he had shuffled around and then got in, he was out of contact, and of course he didn't particularly want to get smacked in the face by a tree man, so he kept him out of combat. And there we are. But here's important, he challenged with his Grey Seer, so I had to accept with my BSB, which was so stupid, because if I hadn't put my BSB there, my treeman would have been free to hit his Grey Seer in the face and then hit the bell in the face. But the way things stood, it was my silly strength 4 BSB that was stuck trying to fight that bell, which basically loses me the game. So big mistake there. If you want a treeman to twat a screaming bell, don't put a character in there. Again, I think the Grey Seer can challenge, and then it says you can't. If I played that wrong, please leave your comments, but overall I'll just accept responsibility for playing that like an idiot or not seeing it coming, so I won't make that mistake again. But you'll see in the other reports that this is actually something that worked quite well for me, is putting a tree man and both heroes into a unit, and they actually work really well as a team. You get the banner from BSB, my heroes are quite difficult to kill, so is the tree man, and together they just chomp through stuff. And when I have Law of Life, it works really well, as you'll see in Game 3, but anyway. So this is in my combat, so I charge in the extra hero. At the end of first combat, he reformed, and we played... It got a bit contentious, because we forgot to do the combat reforms at the end of the first round, but we kind of did it retrospectively, retconned it, so he had combat reformed and put his BSB on the left-hand side of the unit, which is very important, because if he'd left it on the right-hand side of his unit, as far as the unit's concerned, when I combat reformed, I could shuffle my treeman so that the BSB was in combat, so he couldn't he couldn't make way to the left when I charged with my noble. But I think we 4-upped it on a dice, and we went, if we'd done it all in the right order, his BSB, he could have reformed his BSB onto the far left of his unit before I could combat reform mine. So anyway, when I charged in, he put his BSB over there, try and hit my noble. But as it turns out, my noble just kills his BSB over a couple of rounds of combat, and this one just grinds out. My treeman there has had to kill off the last rat swarm, which he put in the way, which is very annoying. Because this combat's just grinding out, nothing much is happening, and in his turn he's able to charge in that block of slaves on the right there, which is incredibly annoying. This is turn 4, as the big red dice will say. So here's an overview of this bit. In order to stop some other spells going off, I had to let him have a Warp Lightning, which took off my unit of Glade Riders that was mincing around at the backboard. And more importantly, so I think this is a couple of turns of combat in. As you can see at the top there, my treeman fluffed his attacks in a round of combat, did 1 Thunderstomp, lost combat, and failed his leadership 8. And I think he was just out of BSB reroll. So he got run down by a unit of Skaven slaves, which made me so sad when that happened. Which was the whole point of the flying BSB, but, I mean, again, that was just my mistake for committing that BSB there when there was just no need to. And more importantly, in this magic phase, so the treeman ran away in my combat turn. So this is his turn 5. In the magic phase, he's used up all his warp tokens by now. He had the power scroll. So when he dreaded 13th my big unit, what he'd done is he used a lot of dice to cast Plague on them. I didn't want Plague to go off, so I had to dispel scroll that, and then he used his last warp token because he had the D3 automatic that the Grey Seer comes with, and he'd bought an extra 2 and the power scroll, which is fair play. If you're playing Skaven, you need to power a magic phase, power the magic phase. So yeah, and then I lost the dice off there, 4 dice versus his 5, the power scroll, and that's how he did that. But anyway, so I don't have a mage, and he gets through the spell that does damage to everything within 12 inches, and everything's affected. I think his units are affected on 5 up, and my units are affected on 4 up. Everything was affected. The tree man took a couple of wounds, but both my heroes just died. And that was it, really. and I think my Treeman then lost combat and fled and was run down by the bell. Oh dear. So we just call it there. He had 2 units bearing down on my last unit of Glade Guard on the left. We thought that fleeing units gave away victory points in the comp, so I figured in his last turn, whether he charges me and I flee and I can't rally, or he catches me, it doesn't make a difference. So I gave him my entire army. Turns out fleeing units didn't give victory points, but not much of a difference. When he tabled me, he got the full 2,600 VPs for killing my general and killing the BSB in combat. I still got 1,000 odd VPs off him, but it just goes to show that experience with this army and playing Skaven. I think this is my first game of Wood Elves against a Skaven with a Screaming Bell, so if that's something I learned is put Tree Man in, put nothing else in. Do not put characters in there because they will just get suckered into fighting the Bell, which is not what they want to be doing. Also, it didn't help that he passed a lot of 4-up ward saves with his Grey whilst my hero and Eagle were both refusing to hit on 3-ups. But, there we go. He was, I think AJ, he said, everyone called him, was a brilliant guy to play against. We were talking strategy throughout, and, he said I played it well, just apart from that mistake. But, experience. I won't make that mistake again, but he played it really well. I really liked his army. It wasn't too bad for a Skaven list, only the single seer, 3 slave blocks, but, only the 2 war machines. I didn't think it was too horrific. And yes, the 5 Waterstone tokens in the Power Scroll was a bit tricky to deal with, but again, when you're spending 600 points on your Lord, which is a caster, I reckon there's absolutely no point doing that if you're not going to try and power through the spells that you need to win the game. But anyway, so I went down 17-3 using the Tolworth scoring system. It would have been a 20-0, but the way their brackets work made it a lot harder. I think you needed 2,100 VP difference in order to get 20-0. It's different. I mean, if you watch Tom Richards' things about reports, you'll see he thinks it's stupid, which I kind of agree with, but kind of don't, as in, it makes it difficult to get 20-0s, and it's not the standard thing for the tournament, so it's odd. And I do agree that 1,500 VPs, you feel, if you play a lot of tournaments, you kind of feel hard done by when you don't get your 20-0. But in my case, it saved my bacon. But then again, when everyone's playing under the same scoring system, I don't think it makes much of a difference. I found it odd that I think it was 100 VPs to get the win, so to get 11-9. Then it went up to 200 VPs to go up a bracket, and then later on, it's back down to 150. Or something like that, or the other way around. So I just didn't see why it was easy to get from one bracket to another than to get why it was more difficult to get from the 19-1 to the 20-0 than it is to get from the 13-7 to the 14-6. But we're all playing under it, so there we go. So that was my game 1. Hope you enjoyed that. Do leave any comments or constructive criticism, as it were, and I'll see you for game 2.